Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Check the Gates. I am Chen Reiss, and for my first show as a host, I have chosen to speak with a close friend and a musician I admire totally, Mandolin Virtuoso Avi Avital.
Hello.
Hi, Avi.
Hey there, how are you?
I am great. How are
Good
you
to see
doing?
you. I'm good. Good.
No
Hold on,
jet
let me just.
setting this month, huh, Avi?
No, nothing of that kind.
When was the last time you spent 2 whole weeks at home?
Never. No, that's not true. I mean, I had a residency at Schleswig-Holstein Music Festival in 2017. I was there for 2 months with 22 concerts or something like that. And we were living, with the family for 2 months. We played there together.
Yes, I
You
remember
know
very
about
well.
it. But we'll tell the viewers. I played
Lovely.
practically in these 2 months all my programs, everything I can play, everything in my repertoire, I played in this festival. And that was wonderful because I was there for living 2 months in Lubeck,
Yeah,
eating breakfast at the same place for 2 months. The time before that happened was in high school, I think.
right, right.
And
So
this,
speaking about high school, let's start
yeah.
from the very beginning. Of all the instruments out there, why mandolin?
Well, I grew up in Beersheba in Israel, and some people, I guess, from at least that follow this channel will
Yeah,
know that there is a story with mandolin and Beersheba. My city is the capital of mandolin playing in Israel,
yeah,
and it's all thanks to a wonderful coincidence, really.
yeah,
Or a chain of coincidences, because practically all the professional, or most of the professional mandolin players in Israel come from Beersheba, come from the same school, and
yes.
it was a teacher. His name is Simcha Natanzon.
Hmm.
He passed away already 10 years ago. But when he immigrated to Israel from St. Petersburg, that was in the 70s, they send him to Beersheba, or this is I'm telling the legend now. I don't know how, where the truth is aligned, but he was sent to Beersheba. He came to Beersheba,
Which
and
must have been a cultural shock for him.
for sure.
Yeah,
And he applied for a job in the local conservatory as a violin teacher, because he was a violin. He was totally like he knew a little bit how to play the mandolin, but was definitely not a mandolin player, but a violin virtuoso. I still remember him playing the violin amazingly.
yeah.
Only that in the local school, they told him, "We're sorry, we have already a violin professor, so we can't offer you the job. But we have this, whatever, 30 mandolins in the basement. We don't know what to do with them. If you want a job, you can start a mandolin orchestra, and if not, good luck."
Yeah,
So he did, and this was an amazing event that influenced a lot my life, because he was autodidact. He really wasn't a mandolin teacher, but he was an amazing musician. So all the students that he had, and the mandolin orchestra in Beersheba, which is really an incredible level, has always been, and still now. All of us, we play the mandolin in a very unorthodox way. For example, I just
yes.
give you one example. This teacher, Simcha Natanzon, okay, I'll rephrase it. All mandolin players in the world and guitarists, they hold a pick like this,
Right.
right?
Okay.
If you
Yes.
see someone that holds a pick like this, you know
Yeah.
for sure that they come from Beersheba.
I
Because
see.
this violin teacher, he saw a pick, he said, okay, feels like I should hold it this way. And this is how he
Right.
taught generations of mandolin players in Be'er Sheva, how to hold the pick. And that, I won't go into details, but that kind of proved to be a blessed mistake, because it offers so much more possibilities technical wise. So from complete ignorance about how not to play the mandolin, he was also not conditioned, and taught us and my colleagues from Be'er Sheva as a whole school 40 years this kind of mistaken technique that is actually better than the traditional one.
This is such an amazing story. And I do have another question in that direction. So, you know, for singers, when we finish the conservatory, when we graduate, there is a certain way to start a career. You do competitions, you go to an opera studio, you get a fest Vertrag, a fest contract in an opera house. But for you, for a mandolin player, there are no rules, there isn't really a way to present yourself. So in a way, I think that you're really a genius, because you're a pioneer. You paved your own way from Be'er Sheva to Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
So how did you do that?
Well, I think it was a struggle. I mean, again, I was in this bubble in Be'er Sheva playing violin music on mandolin, something really weird. And I think the turning point for me was just right before I was 18. And, you know, in Israel, as well as you, we had to go to the military service. Yeah. There's no other way. And there was a program for musicians. You know, the idea was that the Israeli military gives an opportunity to a very limited number of people every year to pursue with their talent and kind of not, you know, fall off the track with their talent or whatever they did. Yeah. And I did this competition. This is the kind of an audition that is really a competition, because only 20 people a year get it. And this was the first time I ever participated in something like that. But even and I got it, and therefore I went to the music academy in Jerusalem when I was 18, while doing a very light military service that didn't interrupt really my career. And then I remember in the music academy, the 5th floor was the library of the academy, and there were always on the table in the front all the flyers from different competitions, national and international. So students could come and browse, you know, what competitions, what openings. This is how you start your career practically. Like literally every, you know, couple of weeks I would go there and like, okay, singers, violin, string competition, chamber music, and I couldn't, piano, many of them. And I couldn't really apply to any of these competitions. And I really didn't know how to, you know, get the career started, get myself heard. And until I found this one competition, which was a national competition that said for all instruments. And I said, like, this is my chance. And this was it's called the Paul Ben Chaim competition. It's right. Paul Ben Chaim is an Israeli composer, is the Israeli composer. Mm-hmm. And this competition named after him was focused about the performance of Israeli contemporary music. So quite a niche, but nevertheless, there was the only competition that opened for all strings. So I applied, and it was all through the phone at the time. And they told me, you know, what are you playing? I said, the mandolin. I said, like, yeah, but it's not for mandolin. I said, like, what do you mean? It says for all instruments. And the woman said, yeah, all instruments. I mean, violin, cello, you know, all the instruments, piano, mandolin. And that led to a discussion and the letter and so on. And finally, they agreed to accept me into this competition. I had to prepare an entire repertoire of only contemporary Israeli music. And this is what I did. And I went through first stage, second stage, and I ended up winning this competition and winning all the other instruments, this violin and cello that the woman mentioned. And this was formative for me, not only because it was the first kind of tap in the shoulder that it's okay, don't panic, it's good what you're doing, and just continue doing it. Which is enormous for an 18 years old. I mean, that doesn't really know how to start a career. That was a really great sign and very important, you know. And the other thing, more importantly, is ever since the love to contemporary music, to new music, and especially to Israeli contemporary music. Since then, I'm playing so much of that music, and I've commissioned so many of the Israeli composers, some colleagues, some of my teachers at the academy, and it really became kind of a thing that I do ever since.
Yeah. And what was the next step? How did you, when you arrived Berlin, how did you get to Deutsche Grammophon? You are the only mandolinist, the first mandolinist to have a multi-record record deal with the label.
I think that also the story also kind of represents my life, or the way I used to, you know, conduct myself in an early age. Again, being a mandolin player, not an obvious instrument, there wasn't a path, there wasn't something that I could really follow and like do the same like other people did before and succeeded. I had to kind of invent my way, and really, you know, I realized very quickly that, okay, I love the mandolin. I absolutely adore this instrument. But for people, for promoters, for record labels, for managements, it's not in the front of their head.
Yes.
It's like no promoter was sitting in the office and saying like, I should have a mandolin concert, you know? So I really have to convince people. And with Deutsche Grammophon, it was like with all my other kind of start stories, it was the same. Like I had an idea. I remember for a record when I moved to Berlin from Italy, and I was determined to be on a major label. I remember myself moving to Germany with kind of saying to myself, in 2 years you have to be on a major label. And I was 29 at the time, 30, and I had this idea to record Bach's music on mandolin. And I had a meeting with a senior person in a label, I won't mention the name. And then I sat there in the office and said, like, I have this, I won this competition and that. And I have a great idea. I'm going to do a record, and it's going to be Bach on mandolin. And the person looked at me and said, like, good luck. We'll call you and all the best. And then I realized that I really have to do it myself, because again, on the paper, I realized that in my head is an amazing album, but when I say to someone, it just doesn't register. So what I did is I just decided to produce it myself. I kind of emptied my bank account and applied to some grants and kind of collected the money to make the album. And I remember myself holding like booklets of Deutsche Grammophon albums and Sony albums to see, you know, who was the best producer and what is the best concert hall and what orchestras should I record it with. And I kind of collected the best materials, really the top venues that I could imagine, and spent all my money on this, and went to the recording studio, until I had a master. And then with a master tape, I went back to Sony and to Deutsche Grammophon and to other labels, and that was it, with a master, with a lot of luck also. I mean, and just a good timing, I think. It clicked, and Deutsche Grammophon really liked the idea when they heard it, and
and that's the way to Carnegie Hall.
And that's the way. That's the hard way, the long way, but very satisfying way to Carnegie Hall.
That's a very inspiring story, Avi. And I have one last question. I know you prepared something like a treat for our audience. But I have one last question that I always wanted to ask you. If you could write a letter to one composer, dead or alive, and ask him to write a mandolin concerto for you, who would you write to and why?
I give you one guess, Chen. Come on, is it that difficult to guess? Of course, Bach and again Bach. You know, if I could choose one, Time Machine, no question. But there was, I remember there was like one of my favorite contemporary composers is Luciano Berio, and I remember writing him a letter. I actually had the letter already. I was just moving to Italy, and I had a friend helping me in Italian because my Italian was very bad, still not so good. Writing a letter to Luciano Berio, kind of asking to meet with him, and in my fantasy, it would have led to a cadenza for mandolin solo. He wrote a cadenza for every instrument existing. So I thought, maybe I could pursue him to write for the mandolin. Unfortunately, I was just too late to send this letter because just 2 weeks after I had this letter, the news arrived that he passed away. And but it was like I felt. It would have never happened, but I felt like that this would be amazing if he wrote for mandolin solo, because he had such an understanding of each instrument. I think it would have been amazing. But
I'm sure he would have been very happy to read your letter and write you the cadenza. Avi, what did you prepare for us? I'm very curious.
So it's a pretty new piece from last year. By Giovanni Sollima. Giovanni Sollima is an Italian cellist, performer, composer, a very dear person, an amazing artist, one of these people that are like just 100% music. He never stops being a musician for a second. And I played with him in several occasions, and he wrote me this prelude that then became a concerto. This is a version of a prelude that then became a cadenza within a bigger piece that he wrote and I performed for the first time last January in Italy. And nevertheless, I really like this prelude also. It's just kind of the DNA of the bigger piece. And I'm about to record it, so it's good to play it in a concert to live audience.
For the first time.
All right. So, hold on, put this. Morgano. How are you doing, Chen?
Great. I am so happy to see you. Really missed you. Been a long time.
Yes. We have some concerts together this summer.
It is summer in Italy. Yes, yes.
Could be fun by then. Come on.
Bravissimo! Absolutely incredible, really great.
Thank
Love
you.
it. It's the first piece by Solima that I hear. I really, really love it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
He's
really
amazing. You
great.
should all check him out.
Amazing. Avi, thank you so much. Before we say goodbye, I would like to announce that the next Check the Gate live show will be tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Central European Time with a special guest, Dario Vero, who is a film composer who composed the music from the movie Stolen Princess. And he will compose live for you during the show.
Wow.
So join us
Nice.
also tomorrow. Avi, thank you so much.
I'll be
You are
there.
so incredible, so amazing. Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Be well.
Thank you.
And see you
Check the
soon.
gate.
Check the gate.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Ken. Bye-bye.
Bye.